You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Kelvin necklace Schwarzenegger. Oh,
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee, joined as always by Duane on the phone today. Duane, finally, after months and months of waiting, we finally have a seamlessly a little bit of summer, finally.
Indeed, it was over 30 degrees Celsius here in Toronto yesterday. A lot of sun. My not-so-haired head is a little bit tender this morning after walking around a lot yesterday afternoon. But we'll recover. We'll get it done. It's good to see.
And finally, my bike is out. Yeah, I'm a little late to the party, but I'm going to go for a bike ride today. It's that type of day. And yes, I'm still mad at Sportsnet for not showing the Giro d'Italia, but that is a topic for the Five Rings podcast, which we will do very soon. We promise you. It's almost becoming a gimmick now, but we're pretty soon going to bring back Five Rings.
Well, exactly. I love Five Rings. It's all about timing because my job situation changed and Kevin's situation changed, so it's become difficult to find the time to do it. But if you support us on Patreon, these shows will come out more consistently, right, Kevin?
Exactly. Patreon.com/Sports Podcasting Network. That's Patreon.com/Sports Podcasting Network. Thanks for listening live on Facebook, on YouTube, and as well, always on-demand version of the show on sportspodcastingnetwork.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcast, you can get Sports Podcast. Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio. You can get the Sports Podcasting Network. Duane, the month of champions continues. And yesterday, to the surprise of some at the beginning of the season, a quite interesting Ligue 1 season, which crowned a champion that we didn't necessarily expect.
No, exactly. And it's kind of nice to see a different champion after how many years in a row is PSG the champion? Several at any point at this point. And
yeah,
and for Monaco to get that title yesterday was something. But I mean, the question I have, and I think anyone watching this or observing this would have the same question: is like, this is nice and great and all that, but how long before the vultures come in and start picking away at the not even yet cold corpse of this title team? The big teams are going to come sweeping in, and they're going to take those players. That's been Monaco's way for its entire history, though, that they produce players and then they sell them on, and that's a profitable way to exist. But I guess, you got to celebrate your moments when you have them, because they're going to be few and far between. We see it in La Liga as well with, Real Madrid almost all but assured themselves yesterday. You think back to that Atletico Madrid championship in 2014, and you just shake your head and go, how the hell did that happen? That was a miracle. And this is not quite at the same level as that one, I think, but certainly similar, and certainly a little nice to occasionally have a bit of a change up, right?
Exactly. And in a month where Feyenoord last week won the Eredivisie, first time in 18 years, I believe, 17 years. And Dirk Kitt actually announced his retirement as well. So he goes out as a champion. But going back to Monaco, of course, Kylian Mbappe had a lot of things to say this season. Falcao produced as well. And it's a team that was built. A lot of money was spent for Monaco to build this roster. They achieved their goal. They played well in the Champions League. Yeah, at a certain point, you face bigger teams and you lose, but they probably went as far as they could. Was a quarterfinals, if I'm not mistaken. And for Monaco, now Liga champion, they're going to go back to the Champions League next year. It was a season, though, that PSG were not necessarily even their direct competition. Yeah, they finished second, but OSG Nice, yeah, they little slip at the end. But Nice, for the majority of the season, especially the beginning, Dwayne, they look like champions. Like with Balotelli in the ranks at the beginning when the honeymoon phase was still going on, it was all going smoothly, and it was an actual interesting season in Liga.
Yeah, well, yeah, nice to see Balotelli kind of have a bit of a bounce back season. He's obviously a player that has a soft spot in my heart, at any rate, just based on his career at Manchester City, which is now going back quite a few years. And this is not someone you consider like a youthful indiscretions anymore. Isn't necessarily what you're thinking about when you think of Mario, because he's not young anymore, really. But nice to see him a bit of a bounce back there. No, Ligue 1 was the last few years, it was kind of an anticlimactic sort of non-factor in many ways because PSG ran away with it so much. But this year, with the emergence of a couple teams, as you say, it was a far more interesting season. It's like I said, it's going to be very difficult if you like the idea of teams like Monaco rising up and taking the brass ring, so to speak. It's going to be difficult to watch this get dismantled, but that's the reality. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester City, Manchester United, teams like that, they're going to sweep in. They're going to take their top players, and it's up to clubs like Monaco to find more of them. And that's how the whole world just spins, Kevin.
And we'll see where Mbappe leaves. If he leaves, we'll see where he lands. If he stays, maybe Monaco can pull off the back-to-back. Just want to talk about La Liga for a second, Duane, because with the victory in the weekend, Real Madrid are 1 point away with one game left from the title. Barcelona 3 points back in second position. Real Madrid, with Mr. Cristiano Ronaldo, recordman, are now only 1 point away from winning their first La Liga title since 2012.
Yeah, it was not much of the competition yesterday. Look, La Liga, as I said a moment ago, when Atletico Madrid in 2014, I actually went out and found Atletico Madrid fans that day and wanted to be part of that. And I was in a bar where there were several Barcelona fans as well. And I think everyone at the time, the Barcelona fans included, stood up as the final whistle was approaching and were applauding Atletico Madrid's accomplishment to win the title at the Camp Nou as well. They clinched it, which is particularly romantic and wonderful that they did that. The point being that, even the Barca fans understood the significance of that. That is a league that is just so, such a two-horse race. And, Real Madrid's going to get it this year. I can't see them dropping the point there in the final game. But by and large, it's, it begs the whole question of whether or not that level of excellence is good for a league, whether it allows people to become inspired by the league. And here in North America, we tend to view that negatively, but in Europe, they tend to view the parity that we have negative here. And I don't know what the answer is. I think it's something in between. That's probably why the Premier League's so popular, is because it is a bit of an in-between. There are top elite teams, but it's a much deeper league, which is why it's much more compelling to a lot of us.
No, exactly. And you can't really undervalue the brilliant team that Madrid is, how they're built, how they are so deep, how they're managed to an extent, and how they're just performing this year like almost any team that I've seen before. I have seen the top of the tiki-taka. I wasn't necessarily covering the game in the beginning of the tiki-taka, which was the late Puyol time at Barcelona. Started just after that. The Messi dominance is basically when I started watching Barcelona on a more consistent basis. And yeah, that team was impressive. But Madrid right now, I think, with like the underrated play of Karim Benzema, this cannot be stressed enough. Like the play he did in the semifinal against Atletico with the three players on the touchline, evades all three, make that pass, it becomes a goal, and they move on to the final. You cannot underestimate the talent, the skill, the sheer brilliance. Like this team is like a team. It's more than an all-star team. Like it's almost an ultimate dream team. Madrid is Gareth Bell. It's not even like, can you imagine the depth of this team? This team might be one of the best team we have ever seen in the game. And I know it's an hyperbole, Duane, but this is an impressive stuff from Madrid.
No, for sure. We've talked about this a few times over the past couple of weeks that, are we underestimating how good this team is? Are we not ranking them in the way that we should be? And if they do beat Juve in a week and a half or so now, when the Champions League final happens, then we do have to start to have those conversations. Or, of course, there's never been a back-to-back champion in the Champions League era. Back in the European Cup era, there's been a few, including Real Madrid a couple times themselves, in fact, multiple years in a row. But nonetheless, in the Champions League era, when more money was in, it's been a very difficult thing to do. So not only have we never seen back-to-back, but three and four is something that's truly absurd in many ways. This is, a better team overall than what those top Barcelona teams were, honestly. The top Barcelona teams were great, but I think what this Real Madrid team does better than those teams did was it adapts a little bit better. It's a little bit more tactically flexible. I think it can play kind of any style it wants. It can counter you if you want. It can be very aggressive and fast and athletic getting up on the counter, but it can also play possession because it has to a lot. It has to break down bunkers. So it really is a complete team. And Ronaldo, as much as a lot of us love to hate him, maybe the stretch he's having right now might be better than anything Messi did. Maybe. It's arguable, and it's great that we get to see both these players at the peak of their powers, but, we haven't really seen Messi's still a brilliant player, and I think we kind of underestimate how good he is still, but he hasn't been quite as good as he was during his peak years the past couple of years, and I think that's
and maybe it's a good way.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Duane, and I don't know how much weight and how much credibility those rumors and gossip coming out of Barcelona that are speaking of a certain unrest between maybe star players in a locker room. I don't necessarily want to give name and give credence to the dirt sheets because that's where those things come from, right? The gossip, the Marsa, the gossip pages. But apparently it might not be as it seemed in the Barcelona locker room, and it'll be interesting if that ever triggers a move, because we're going to talk about Ronaldo in a second and how Ronaldo now has become the best scorer in the top 5 in the history of the game, and how like 367 goals, I think, or something like that. It's an incredible output, first of all. But Ronaldo has tested himself in 3, 4 even. I think 3 for sure, right? He played for Lisbon, he played for United and Madrid, so 3 big leagues, right? And he tested himself, and he's been successful all the way through. Like, what's his legacy? Like, at this point, still young, still having maybe a decade in front of him to continue to pile up goals and record. What does this record mean for Ronaldo?
Well, he has to be considered amongst the greatest of all time. That's just as simple as it puts. In some ways, it's unfortunate for him that he went out in injury during the European Cup, the European Championship final last year, because had he played that game and been the guy that propelled them to the title, propelled little Portugal, which was punching way above its weight to win the Euros last year, then I think maybe he wouldn't even have much of a question. But Ronaldo's divisive, right? Like, there's a lot of people that don't like him. He has a certain arrogance to him, which turns people off, which also excites a lot of people too. But I think that we have to move past that and just realize that sort of arrogance is one of the things that propels him to be as great as he is. And certainly we're privileged right now to watch, I think, 2 of, if you're going to rank the top 10 players of all time, say, I think we're watching the 2 of them right now currently play at the same time. And that's something that we should probably thank our lucky stars for.
And just to finish on my Messi thoughts, I was just going to say, it was Messi that I was talking about. And maybe there's a problem in the locker room. Would you ever see, like, this is a big question that people have been saying for years, and we've been talking about this for like the entire duration of this show, which is over a year now. Will Messi ever leave Barcelona?
Yeah, it would take a lot, obviously. I think he might at the very end, but I can't see him moving for another 4 or 5 years until he's really truly, ready to enter his MLS years, so to speak. I don't mean to miss with that, obviously, as someone who covers MLS, but
it's China years, maybe.
China years, whatever. When he goes to get a paycheck at the end, and the question I have though with him is whether or not at this point in time, he needs to, in terms to solidify his status as the best ever, if that's something he aspires to. And I don't think Messi will ever be considered the best ever unless he does one of 2 things. Unless he goes to England and dominates there, which is not fair and not right, I don't think. But I think it's probably true that if he, scores a hat trick on a rainy Tuesday on Stoke, which could you imagine Twitter the day he scored a hat trick on a rainy Tuesday on Stoke? It'd be amazing. But anyway.
We would literally do a special live show. We would literally do, all right, guys, it happened. Messi did score 3 goals on a rainy night at Stoke. All right, he's the best ever. Done.
Precisely. The other thing he could do, obviously, to solidify his legacy is next summer to win the World Cup for Argentina, which maybe at this point in time is the last thing that he has to accomplish in his career, is to win something with Argentina. And, it's increasingly looking less and less likely like that's possible. I'm not really ready to even if Argentina makes the World Cup at this point, if you look at the qualifying campaign. So
it's not a guarantee yet.
There's a lot. Yeah, for sure. I think they'll probably find a way in, but nonetheless, I think there's one or two things that he needs to do to be considered the best ever. But even if he doesn't do that, he's amongst the best ever. And, as I said a moment ago, we should really just thank ourselves that we're able to watch these two brilliant players play at the same time.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some MLS game last night and U.S. Open Cup Round 2 wrapped up yesterday. And we'll talk about some big upsets, especially in the NASL and USL Second Division.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane, last night, Seattle was playing against Kansas City.
Were they?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the question. Well, were they playing last night?
I don't know. And look, there was an interesting sort of take that I heard on Seattle that was putting a lot of the blame to their current slump, I guess, to the fact that Jordan Morris isn't necessarily playing to the same level that he did last year. He's not making the kind of runs. He's not having those kind of penetrating runs. It's just opening up space for Lodero and Dempsey. And that's a tactical take on this team right now, but there certainly is something going on. Like, as I said 2 days ago, I didn't think they were ever the best team in MLS. And I think that the fact that they won the MLS Cup was kind of overrating them this year, if that makes sense. I mean, I understand they're the champions and I understand that they won it. This isn't a Toronto bitterness thing. It's just, if you objectively look at them, they weren't the best club. They just got, hot at the right time. Let's win in MLS. But it shouldn't be shocking that they're struggling a little bit, but it is shocking that they're struggling this much. And, I offered that Morris theory up, which again wasn't mine. That was something that I believe I heard on Extra Time Radio. I can't source it right quite in my head yet, but I heard it somewhere else. Not me anyway. That's just one theory. And if anyone else has another one out there, I'm happy to hear it, because really it is a bit baffling at this point. And last night's result was particularly baffling.
Gerso with a hat trick in 13 minutes with the 56th, 58th, and 69th minute goal. The last one assisted by Zusi and Benny, our friend Benny Falhaber. And those three goals were enough, very, very much enough. At least I think one goal would have been enough to put the game away the way it looked. So we mentioned a lot this offseason because of our Toronto focus, obviously, the maybe championship hangover. And obviously Toronto didn't have that, but they didn't celebrate either. Maybe the champagne and the Prosecco and the Heineken available in the locker room and for the weeks to follow that win are the reason of this quote-unquote hangover.
And well, perhaps a very long hangover if that's the case. I don't quite know what they were drinking. But, Toronto, if you look at it, too, they didn't actually – they're flying right now, but they didn't start the season poorly, but not well either. They had a lot of draws at the start, so maybe there is something there. But I think it's, there's just a psychological sort of letdown after you win a championship. I think that it must be very difficult to overcome. And if you're at like the elite level that these guys are at, that kind of sort of intangible stuff matters a little bit more. So who knows? But I don't think right now, this point of the season, we are May 19th it is today, so
18th,
almost
18th,
into June. Sorry, didn't want to get us too far ahead, but it's by and large what I'm making is that we're a long time into this, and I don't think it's really, you can point to hangovers from MLS Cup at this point. There's no kind of excuse there anymore. So, look, there's a lot of factors that went into Seattle's run last year. I think that they got hot at the right time. They added Ladera. They made the coaching change. They sort of were able to get things done and get through that playoff run. But, as I said the other day, luck played a major role. And I think sort of they galvanized each other too when they made the coaching change as well. And I think that played a role in sort of some of their success. And they can't really replicate that this year unless they fire the coach again, which they're not going to do, I don't imagine. Long season yet, though. But that said, someone did the numbers last year, and if you're below the red line on May 1st, it doesn't so much matter. But statistically speaking, if you're below the red line on June 1st, so in 2 weeks, historically speaking, it did kind of matter. So, we can't fall into the trap of saying it's early much longer, Kevin.
A lot of games in Major League Soccer last night. Let's start with the first one. Philly 2, Houston 2. Yes, it was in Philly. And Houston is quite a typical South American and Central American type of team where they don't travel that well. And laid an egg in Philly. Philly won 2-0. Philly slowly turning things around. Ever since Curtin's seat got hot, well, at least in our perception, our perspective, last few games, turn it around. Wins against New York-based teams, and now win against Houston.
Well, there's 3 on a trot now, which you can't ignore. And they're just quickly, if I could look at it here, they're not very far apart. They're 3 points out of the playoff spot right now. So
they won against the Red Bulls, against DC, and now Houston.
Yeah, and if you look back the game before that, that was the Montreal comeback game. So they had the 3-0 lead in that game. So by all intents and purposes, they could be 4 straight right now.
Yeah, they should have won that game.
They blew that game, so they're not.
They should have won that game.
But yeah, exactly. They had a 3-0 lead. So you got to say that they're doing something right at this point, which tells you, MLS is a funny little league. Just when you think you have a handle on it, you don't. Look at Minnesota at the start of this year as well, how bad they were. And they were. They were truly bad. The statements we were saying about them were true. But now they're fine. So, hey, MLS, man.
Chicago 3, Colorado 0. Colorado continues to Colorado, going rapidly to the bottom of the Western Conference.
Yeah, the stat came out. They're averaging less than 3 shots per game. My God, that is. Why did they go get a Tim Howard as their DP? Clearly, what this club needs is someone to score, someone to produce any type of offense, whatever. They're just completely impotent, this club. And last year they were able to get it done with a very solid defense, with a very solid ability to keep those clean sheets. It appears more and more like Sam Cronin should be held up as should have been an MVP candidate last year, as I said the other day. I'm joking, but I'm not when I say that, because
why
obviously
did they
take him out of this. This is a mess.
Why was he traded? Anyways, maybe the future will give us something and the reasoning behind it, but and maybe the assets that Colorado got in that trade will start to produce. But right now, it's a lopsided trade. With hindsight over what, a month and a half now, it was a lopsided trade.
Well, it instantly turned Minnesota's season around. And that is, they made some adjustments in terms of their tactics. They're not as aggressive. They used to play a pretty high press kind of overlapping fullback kind of approach at the start of the season. They were getting completely destroyed by it, and they've switched back that. Matt Dole did a great breakdown when he was talking about the Toronto game, showing how maybe their defensive approach right now is actually hurting them a little bit, but it's one of those things that it's hard to say, because they're maybe not producing as much offense as they would have early on in the year, but they're also not allowing 5 goals a game. So, half a dozen, 1/6 of the other. We'll talk about that. But, but the biggest significant factor and change to what they did from the start to now is they added Sam Cronin. And this is we here in Toronto, we appreciate Sam Cronin. We only had him for 1 year in Toronto, but he was the guy that spoke up against the insanity at the time. As a rookie, of all things, no one else was talking. Sam Cronin stood up in the postseason locker room and said, "This club is a mess and something needs to change." And he got traded 2 days later, which spoke to the fact that the club was a mess and something needs to change.
I see a correlation here.
Yeah,
guess why he was traded?
He gets out of Dodge. That he gets out of Dodge just in time, maybe, I don't know. Obviously, no. Yeah. He's got a lot of leadership qualities, and why he got traded, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense why they would have got rid of him. It really, truly doesn't. And all the trades that transactions that I've seen in MLS over the past 5 or 6 years, that one still to this point makes no sense to me. And this isn't in hindsight. This is just the time of it. What the hell? Why they clearly he was one of their best players last year. Why would they move that? And then we're seeing the results now.
Maybe he spoke up about something and we don't know. Maybe he pulled the Toronto. I don't know. Anyways, Nikolic with the brace and Akam with the goal in between for Chicago for a 3-0 win against the Rapids at Toyota Park. Chicago, again, as predicted this year, a lot better team than the last few years, which, yes, you'll say it's not that hard. And you're right, but they're still playing a lot better. We mentioned Kansas City 3, Seattle none, Real Salt Lake 2, New York City FC 1. Real Salt Lake getting a win at home.
Yeah, that one's surprising because NYCFC looked pretty good. I mean, it's always hard to go to Rio Tinto. It really is. I mean, the altitude, and it's not an easy place to travel to, particularly with the restrictions in MLS, because there's not a lot of direct flights there, right? So it is a very difficult travel destination, even from a place like New York. So all of those factors aside, though, Real Salt Lake's essentially the Monarchs that they were playing, right? Like, they're so banged up, they're so injured that any result they get right now has to be celebrated. And they looked truly terrible heading into this game. So, again, like I said a minute ago, MLS, man, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And MLS, speaking of travel, one of the biggest plane ride in Major League Soccer from Orlando to San Jose. The Lions facing the Quakes at Avaya Stadium. 1-1. They got a point on the road. Nothing too bad here. Orlando continues to keep pace. We'll see what Toronto does tomorrow night on the road at Red Bull Arena. But for the Lions, they continue with a kind of like a dream season that didn't look like a dream season when the offseason was present because of maybe a lack of off-season signing that were marquee for the supporters and the Kaka injury, and then beautiful start of the season for Orlando, racking up points, and it continued with a point on the road.
Oh, yeah, and look, Orlando's had a pretty home-heavy schedule so far, so they need to find these points in the road if they're going to even out. But what have we been saying? The theme of this show, when we're talking about MLS in recent days, is either points in the pocket or points on the table or points in the pocket, right? They have 20 points right now, and traditionally speaking in Major League Soccer, if you get 40, you're going to make the playoffs. Maybe 40, 41, 42, somewhere in there. So they're halfway there, and we are still a third of the way of the season. So that's a lot of points in the pocket right now. And for a team that's never qualified for a playoff berth before, I think that this is a remarkable accomplishment so far. And if they can eke out a few more draws in the road, then they can start, thinking a little bit beyond just playoffs. I'm still not completely convinced they're not going to come back to earth a little bit. There's still the question of what's going to happen to Kyle Lauren if he's going to move on in the transfer window. I think that he's getting pulled a couple different ways in that regard. If they do move Lauren on, which would be significant for this particular season, you would have to think that they would. The reason they would do that is that they had something immediately to flip them for, right? Like if they could use the money they got to immediately bring another player in, but that's always going to bring questions. So there are some questions about the Lions, but it's certainly points on the table or points in the pocket, and 20 points, 5 points behind TFC right now. Looking pretty. 6 points up into a playoff spot. That's significant in Major League Soccer, and we'll see. It's been a good season so far for Orlando for sure.
I want to finish the show, Duane, today by just taking a few minutes to talk about the U.S. Open Cup. Yesterday, the second round wrapped up. That's where the USL and NSL team became part of this tournament. There will be a third round, and in the fourth round, Major League Soccer team will come in. A few notable upsets yesterday where UASA team beat NBSL team. It's a little upset, but nothing to talk about. But the New York Cosmos, maybe the biggest branded name team in the second round of US Open Cup, have lost to, let me just get the name right because it's not necessarily a familiar name. Well, it is, but not for the right reason. Reading United AC of the PDL 3, the New York Cosmos of the NASL 2.
Yeah, that one. Look, this isn't quite the Cosmos of the past couple of years. Obviously, we know the problems they had in the off season, and they had to make some changes there. But that brand and those fans and all that value very much the idea that they are at a different level, that they are able to compete with MLS teams. And they beat NYCFC and the Red Bulls. I believe they beat their rivals, their local rivals in the U.S. Open Cup, or at least competed with in the last couple of years. So for them to go out to a PDL team is pretty. That's got to hurt them a lot, because I think they put a lot of value in doing something in the U.S. Open Cup each year, and certainly a bit of a shock there. You know, the USL teams, most of them advanced. There was a couple wins there. You combine that though with the Cosmos and the fact that the Eddies went out to Fury, it really becomes very, very difficult to not defend the idea that USL and NASL are kind of the same right now.
True, but teams like the Kickers, which are big teams in the USL with their history in North American soccer, used to be in the former NASL and USL and A-League and all those leagues over the last 2 decades in North American second division, third division. The Kickers are a mainstay. They're a big name. They're a big institution. And they lost to what's basically a pub team, Christos FC of the USASA. And if you don't know what the UASA is, like I was, that's what it is. It's the United States Adult Soccer Association. It's a national organization for amateur soccer in the United States in the 4th and 5th division of USSF. It consists of 55 state organizations as well as regional and national league. So there have some affiliation with the PDL and PSL, but it's the league below those. And they did beat a USL team yesterday. Christos FC, Duane, a pub team advancing to the 3rd round of the U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that this is a very good pub team. I'm sure this is a pub team that would kick your pub team's ass. But nonetheless, you're exactly right. These are guys that aren't professional. They're probably guys that played college or something like that just want to stay in the game and play on the weekends. Weekend warriors that as you said. I mean, we all know if we played at adult leagues, we've all ran into teams that are pretty damn good. But the idea that they can step up and beat a professional team is just pretty inspiring and pretty, something that they'll probably take forever. The magic of the cup, we call it in England. So I guess we have a little bit of magic of something that.
And they have a chance too of their next opponent is from the PDL, so they kind of a step down of what they just faced. They could pull another upset because on the same side of the bracket, Chicago FC United of the PDL did beat the Pittsburgh Riverhound, which, for a reason that it's because of a player's name that I'm not going to mention, did a terrible thing to a Canadian player a few years ago in the USL when Carl Wiemand was playing for the Red Bulls too, and terrible assaults will happen on the pitch, and this player has been banned, and I still have I can't really cheer for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds because of those reasons and how the Riverhounds ownership situation has evolved over the last few years are a reason as well. But Chicago FC United of the PDL eliminated the Riverhounds, and now they're going to face Christos FC. So I wouldn't be surprised if a USASA team, Christos FC, beats Chicago FC United and moves on to the 4th round to maybe face an MLS team. That is the beauty and the magic of the cup, to see a pub team maybe travel to, so they're in that region, so maybe travel to Chicago to face the Fire.
We played, it would be something remarkable for those guys as well. There was a team a couple of years ago in California that went deep.
Eric Ronaldo was a coach.
Exactly. I'm not I'd have to look at the roster of this team that pulled the upset yesterday to see what they're similar. I know it was Cal FC. They had a lot of former pros and guys that they sort of brought in. It was kind of a super team that they brought in, so it wasn't quite the true pub team idea that it was just a bunch of lads that knew each other. So I suspect that this one is more of a collection of the best players in the league, but still it's remarkable because they don't train every day. They have jobs. They have lives that they're going to have to figure out. And it is something that's kind of neat to see. I'm sure that they played, as I said, soccer at a high level at one point in their life, but now they're having one last chance, one last kick at the can. And any of us that have played sports at any level can kind of relate to that this idea that maybe, what could have been, and then to have that sort of opportunity to step up and have a day.
Hey, and you could be discovered. Who knows? We've seen this happen. There's players from Cal FC of 3-4 years ago that are playing professional at this point. The names escapes me right now, but there is, and they were discovered in that run, in that tournament. And you never know what's going to happen. It could be the last chance, but you can still make good impression in that last chance.
Which is all the more reason that I'm excited to watch the League One Ontario teams have an opportunity to play against the fully professional teams and the PLSQ teams as well, and hopefully the BC League if it gets going. I'm excited to watch that happen in a truly open Blazers Cup, which is something that we've all wanted for quite a while.
And for Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramee. You can follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN, Duane at 24th Minute, and myself at Kev Laramee. Stay tuned to the Sports Podcasting Network tomorrow. We will have a live Soccer Today, as always, on YouTube, Facebook, and the on-demand version on sportspodcastingnetwork.com and iTunes and Feedburner and everywhere you get your podcasts. But until tomorrow, as always, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.